"Who put those bruises on you?" the Mafia Boss asked from the doorway. Elena Bennett froze with one arm trapped inside her white blouse, her back exposed to the morning light, while 3 dark bruises marked the soft curve of her shoulder like fingerprints she had tried desperately to hide. She had expected the supply closet to stay empty for 5 minutes, just long enough to change after a junior executive dumped iced coffee across her at the staff meeting and laughed that the fabric finally had something interesting to cling to. But the man holding the wrong door open was not another careless employee. He was Dante Moretti, the 38-year-old Mafia boss whose name could end negotiations, empty restaurants, and make armed men lower their eyes before he ever raised his voice. Dante owned half the legitimate towers along the Chicago River and controlled far more than anyone admitted. Yet that morning his expensive black suit looked less dangerous than the silence that settled over his face when he saw Elena's injuries. Elena was his senior secretary, a full-figured woman with warm brown eyes, quick judgment, and a memory sharp enough to catch errors in contracts that lawyers billed thousands of dollars to overlook. For 2 years she had organized Dante's impossible schedule, remembered every allergy at family dinners, sent groceries to an elderly janitor after surgery, and endured polished co-workers who whispered that someone her size should never stand beside a man photographed for business magazines. Elena never answered cruelty with cruelty, but she had learned to make herself smaller in other ways, choosing corner seats, apologizing before speaking, and keeping her coat buttoned even when the office heating climbed above 75 degrees. Now, standing half-dressed beneath the harsh fluorescent light, she pulled the blouse closed and said, "Mr. Moretti, please leave," with a steadiness that failed only when her fingers brushed the purple mark near her collarbone. He did not step closer. Instead, he turned his broad body sideways, blocking the hallway so no one else could see her, then removed his charcoal overcoat and extended it backward without looking. "Put this on," he said, his voice low enough to be gentle and cold enough to promise consequences. Elena hesitated, ashamed that he had seen her body, terrified that he would mistake the bruises for weakness, but Dante kept his gaze fixed on the opposite wall until the coat settled around her shoulders and swallowed the stained blouse. Only then did he face her, and she saw what terrified rival crews about him. No shouting, no wild anger, only a stillness so complete that every detail became evidence. His eyes moved from the bruise on her shoulder to the faint red line around her wrist, then to the office badge trembling against her palm. "It was nothing," Elena whispered. Dante's jaw tightened. "Nothing does not leave fingerprints." Before Elena could answer, laughter floated from the conference room, followed by the same junior executive announcing that the secretary had probably spilled the drink herself for attention. Dante opened the closet door wider, and the laughter died the instant his shoes touched the marble hallway. 20 employees turned toward him. Elena remained behind his shoulder, wrapped in a coat worth more than her yearly rent. The executive, Tyler Crane, went pale but attempted a smile. "Sir, we were only joking." Dante stopped 6 feet away. "You humiliated my secretary during a meeting, destroyed company property, and then mocked her while she changed in a closet because every private room on this floor was reserved for men who contribute less than she does." Tyler's smile vanished. Elena looked down, expecting Dante to fire him and move on, because powerful men often defended her only when doing so made them look noble. Instead, Dante turned toward her and asked, in front of everyone, "Miss Bennett, do you want him dismissed, or do you want to tell me what he has been hiding in the quarterly accounts first?" Elena lifted her eyes, shock replacing shame, because the wrong door had revealed her bruises. But Dante's question revealed something far more dangerous. He already knew she had been investigating Tyler in secret herself. Dante's question hit the conference room harder than a gunshot. Tyler Crane stared at Elena as if she had betrayed him, but Elena had never belonged to him, never trusted him, and never planned to let his polished smile hide what she had found buried inside Moretti Holdings. She stepped from behind Dante's shoulder, still wrapped in his charcoal coat, and placed her trembling badge on the glass table. "The vendor payments," she said. 3 shell companies received almost $4 million in 6 months. The invoices were approved after midnight, always from Tyler's credentials, but the final authorization came from an executive account above his clearance. Every face in the room turned toward Dante. He did not react, yet the temperature seemed to drop. Tyler laughed too quickly. She is a secretary. She does not understand corporate accounting. Dante looked at him with the calm expression of a man deciding how much mercy someone deserved. She found what 12 auditors missed. Then he turned to Elena. "Show me." Elena crossed to the wall monitor, aware of every stare following her body beneath Dante's coat. For years, rooms like this had taught her to shrink before people could judge her, but Dante moved to stand beside her rather than in front of her, close enough to protect without taking control. She connected her laptop and opened a spreadsheet containing dates, transfers, and duplicated contracts. The money was routed through consulting firms in Nevada and Delaware, she explained. Then it returned to Chicago through a construction company bidding on your new waterfront project. Dante studied the screen, his eyes narrowing at one name: Bellini Urban Development. The company belonged to a rival family that had spent 2 years pretending to seek peace. "How long have you known?" he asked. 9 days. "Why did you not come to me?" Elena's hand tightened around the edge of the table. "Because someone searched my desk the night I found the first invoice. The next morning I received a photograph of my apartment door." For the first time, Dante's control cracked. It lasted only a second, a flash of fury beneath his stillness, but everyone saw it. "Clear the floor," he ordered. No one moved fast enough. Dante lifted his gaze. "Now." Chairs scraped back, phones disappeared into pockets, and within 20 seconds the conference room was empty, except for Dante, Elena, Tyler, and 2 security men. Tyler attempted to follow, but Dante blocked him with one sentence: "You stay." He called his chief financial officer, froze every waterfront account, cancelled the noon signing, and ordered an external forensic team into the building before Tyler could invent another excuse. Then Dante removed Tyler's access card himself and placed it on the table. "You are suspended pending investigation." Tyler's face twisted as he looked at Elena. "You think he cares about you? He cares about the money you saved him." Dante stepped between them before Elena could answer. "Use her name with respect." His voice remained quiet, but Tyler lowered his eyes. Security escorted him out, and the door closed behind them. Elena exhaled, then swayed slightly. Dante caught her elbow, but released it the instant she stiffened. "May I?" he asked. The question startled her more than his touch. Powerful men rarely ask permission, especially men like Dante Moretti. Elena nodded, and he gently turned her wrist toward the light. The red mark circling it was darker now. "Did Tyler do this? Then who?" Elena pulled her hand away and looked toward the skyline beyond the windows. "My former fiancé, Marcus Hale. He came to my apartment last night. He said I had taken something that did not belong to me." Dante's expression sharpened. "The files?" "A flash drive. I copied the payment records because I was afraid they would disappear." "Where is it?" "Not with me." Dante almost smiled, not because the situation amused him, but because he understood she had outmaneuvered everyone. "You hid it." Elena met his eyes. "I mailed it to myself at an address no one knows." For a moment, the feared Mafia Boss looked at his secretary, not as an employee to protect, but as an equal whose courage had just saved his empire. He walked to the sideboard, poured water instead of whiskey, and handed her the glass. "You cancelled a $400 million trap without firing a shot," he said. "That makes you the most dangerous person in this building." Elena gave a tired, uncertain laugh. "I do not feel dangerous." Dante's gaze softened. Courage rarely does. Before she could respond, his head of security entered carrying a sealed envelope found beneath Elena's apartment door. Inside was a photograph taken that morning, showing Elena entering Moretti Tower while a red circle marked her face. On the back, 6 words had been written in black ink: "Give us the drive by midnight." Dante turned the photograph over once more, and his expression changed. In the corner of the image, reflected in a parked car window, stood the man who had taken it, wearing a Moretti security pin. The Moretti security pin turned the threat from a warning into a betrayal. Dante held the photograph beneath the conference room lights while Elena watched the reflected figure in the car window grow clearer under magnification. Broad shoulders, shaved head, silver pin at the collar. She recognized him before Dante spoke. "Victor Salerno," she whispered. Victor had guarded Dante for 11 years, stood outside hospital rooms, carried confidential files, and attended every private meeting involving the waterfront project. Dante's face revealed nothing, but his fingers tightened around the photograph until the paper bent. "Victor was assigned to protect you this morning," he said. Elena felt the room tilt. "He was waiting near the elevator when I arrived." Dante immediately called his head of security. Victor's tracker showed him inside Moretti Tower, 3 floors below them. Dante ordered the building sealed. Every elevator stopped, and every exit covered without alerting the staff. Then he turned to Elena. "You are leaving with me." "The flash drive arrives at my post office box at 5, she replied. "Then we retrieve it together." Elena shook her head. "If Victor knows the address, taking you there could lead them straight to it." Dante stepped closer, stopping before his shadow touched her shoes. "They already followed you to your apartment. You are not facing them alone." His tone carried command, but his eyes held something more careful, as though he knew protection could feel like another cage to someone who had spent years being controlled. Elena lifted her chin. "Then let me help decide how." Dante studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Tell me your plan." It was the first time any man with power had asked instead of ordered, and Elena hated how much that simple respect affected her. She opened the building map on her laptop and pointed to the underground parking garage. Victor would expect Dante's armored sedan to leave through the private ramp. Elena suggested sending it out with a decoy while they used the service elevator to reach an older delivery entrance connected to the neighboring hotel. Dante approved the plan without changing a word. 10 minutes later, his sedan pulled into traffic surrounded by 2 security vehicles, drawing a black SUV away from the tower. Dante and Elena descended through the service corridor with only Gabriel Ross, Dante's most trusted driver, beside them. The hallway smelled of dust and cold concrete. Emergency lights painted the walls red, and Dante walked slightly ahead of Elena, one hand near his jacket, while keeping enough distance that she never felt trapped. They were 20 feet from the hotel door when the lights went out. Gabriel reached for his flashlight, but a metal door slammed behind them. Footsteps echoed from the darkness. Dante moved instantly, placing Elena against the wall and shielding her with his body. "Stay behind me." A flashlight snapped on at the far end of the corridor, revealing Victor Salerno holding a phone rather than a weapon. "Boss," Victor said calmly, "I hoped you would understand before making this difficult." Dante's voice was colder than the concrete. "You photographed her apartment." "I was trying to recover stolen company information." "You threatened my secretary." Victor glanced at Elena with open contempt. "She is not worth destroying an alliance over." Dante's posture changed by less than an inch, yet Victor took a step backward. "You do not decide her worth." Victor raised the phone, showing a live video of Marcus Hale sitting inside Elena's apartment. Behind him, drawers had been emptied across the floor, and a man searched through her belongings. Marcus smiled into the camera. "Bring the drive to Bellini Pier by midnight, Elena, or your landlord receives evidence that you forged your lease. Your employer receives evidence that you stole corporate records, and the police receive an anonymous report naming you as the person behind the missing money." Elena stared at the screen, suddenly understanding why Marcus had returned after 18 months of silence. He was not merely cruel, he was working for the Bellini family. "You used me to get inside the company," she said. Marcus shrugged. "You were lonely. People like you are grateful when anyone chooses them." The words struck an old wound, but this time Elena did not lower her eyes. Dante looked at her, waiting, giving her the choice he had promised. She drew a slow breath and faced the screen. "Then you never knew me at all." Marcus's smile faded. Elena continued, "The drive is not the only copy. I scheduled the records to be delivered to federal investigators tomorrow morning unless I cancel the transfer in person." Victor's confidence vanished. Dante turned slightly, and Elena saw approval flash in his eyes. She had lied, but only Dante understood that. Victor reached for his waistband. Gabriel moved first, knocking the phone away while Dante drove Victor against the wall and disarmed him without firing a shot. The struggle ended in seconds. As Gabriel restrained Victor, Dante picked up the fallen phone. Marcus was gone from the video, but a new message appeared on the screen with a photograph of the post office where Elena's package was waiting. Beneath it was a countdown showing 2 hours and 13 minutes. Then Elena's phone rang from an unknown number. When she answered, Tyler Crane's voice whispered, "You should never have opened those accounts, Elena. Now Dante has to choose between his empire and keeping you alive." Tyler's call ended before Dante could trace it, but the countdown continued to burn across Victor's fallen phone. 2 hours and 11 minutes remained. Dante ordered Gabriel to deliver Victor to a secure holding room beneath Moretti Tower, then guided Elena through the hotel service exit into an unmarked SUV waiting in the alley. Rain had begun to fall over Chicago, turning the streets silver beneath the late afternoon sky. Elena sat rigidly beside him, his charcoal coat still around her shoulders, while Dante called 3 trusted men and gave them separate instructions so no single person knew the entire plan. He cancelled every waterfront contract, froze the Bellini family's accounts, and sent a legal team to Elena's apartment before Marcus could plant evidence. Yet when he ended the final call, Elena noticed blood darkening the cuff of his white shirt. Victor's knife had cut his forearm during the struggle. "You are hurt," she said. "It is nothing." Elena looked directly at him. "Nothing leaves blood." Dante's eyes held hers, recognizing his own words. Without asking again, she opened the emergency kit beneath the seat and carefully rolled back his sleeve. Tattoos covered his muscular forearm, but beneath them ran an older scar near his wrist, pale and uneven. Elena stopped breathing. She had seen that scar before. 8 years earlier, before Moretti Tower, before the expensive suits and armoured cars, Elena had worked nights at St. Vincent's emergency room as a records clerk while caring for her sick mother. One winter morning, an unidentified man had been brought in after a car exploded near the river. He was bleeding badly, refusing to give his name, and 2 armed strangers had entered the hospital searching for him. Elena had hidden him inside a locked imaging room, switched his patient bracelet, and misdirected the men toward another floor. She had pressed gauze against his wrist while he drifted in and out of consciousness. Before security arrived, he disappeared. Elena had never learned his identity, but she remembered the scar because her own hands had kept pressure on it for nearly 20 minutes. "It was you," she whispered. Dante went still. The city moved beyond the rain-streaked windows, but inside the SUV, time seemed to stop. "St. Vincent's," Elena said. "You were the man in the imaging room." Dante looked at the scar, then back at her face as a memory he had buried returned all at once. "You told me not to die because the hospital paperwork would ruin your morning." Despite everything, Elena almost laughed. "You were being difficult." Dante's guarded expression softened in a way she had never seen. For 8 years, he had searched for the woman who saved him, but the hospital records had been altered and the staff member listed on duty used a married name. Elena no longer carried. He had hired her 2 years ago because of her intelligence and honesty, never realizing she was also the stranger whose courage had preserved his life. "You saved me before you even knew who I was," he said. Elena finished wrapping his wound. "Anyone would have done it." "No," Dante replied quietly. "They did not." His phone rang. The post office security system had been breached, and 3 men were already inside. Dante ordered the driver to change direction, but Elena caught his sleeve. "The package is not there." He stared at her. "You said you mailed it to yourself." "I did, but not the drive." Elena reached beneath the lining of Dante's coat and removed a small silver memory card taped behind one of the interior pockets. His eyes narrowed. "When did you put that there?" "This morning, while you were facing the hallway so I could dress." Dante realized she had hidden the evidence on the one person no traitor would dare search. Elena had trusted his protection before she fully trusted him. The package at the post office contained blank documents and a tracker she had activated from her laptop. "The Bellinis are walking into their own trap," she said. Dante looked at her with something deeper than admiration. But before he could answer, the SUV struck something hard. The driver lost control, and the vehicle spun across the wet pavement before slamming against a concrete divider. Glass shattered. Dante threw himself over Elena, shielding her as another black SUV blocked the road ahead. Men emerged beneath the rain, their faces hidden by masks. Dante reached for his weapon, but Elena grabbed his hand when she saw a red laser moving across his chest from a rooftop. "Sniper," she warned. Dante pulled her down as a bullet tore through the window. Then his phone lit up with a live video from Moretti Tower. His younger sister Sophia was bound to a chair inside his private office, and Tyler stood behind her holding a gun. "Midnight was a courtesy," Tyler said through the speaker. "Bring Elena and the drive to Bellini Pier in 30 minutes, or your sister dies first." Dante's face became stone, but Elena saw the impossible choice beneath it. His family or the woman who had saved his life twice. She placed the memory card into his palm and closed his fingers around it. "You are not choosing between us," she said. "We are going to save her together." Dante studied Elena for one heartbeat, then handed the memory card back to her. "You keep the evidence," he said. "I keep you alive." Rain hammered the damaged SUV while masked men closed in from both sides of the road. The sniper's red laser swept across the broken windshield again, but Elena noticed something Dante's men had missed. The beam moved too smoothly, repeating the same path every 4 seconds. "It is a decoy," she said. "The laser is mounted, not aimed." Dante looked once, understood, and kicked open the rear door. He pulled Elena low behind the concrete divider as Gabriel's backup vehicle raced around the corner, forcing the masked men to scatter. Dante fired only into the pavement near their feet, buying enough time for Elena to reach the second SUV without anyone being seriously hurt. 26 minutes remained. Inside the moving vehicle, Dante called Moretti Tower and discovered Tyler had disabled the private elevators and locked Sophia inside the top-floor office. The Bellini family wanted him at the pier, but Tyler wanted him distracted long enough to escape with Sophia as leverage. Elena opened her laptop and connected to the building's emergency network. "The office doors are electronic," she said. "Tyler changed the access codes, but he forgot I managed the maintenance calendar." Her fingers moved across the keyboard while Dante watched the city blur through rain-darkened windows. "There is a fire inspection override," she continued. "It opens every secured door for 60 seconds, but once I activate it, Tyler will know someone is coming." Dante called 6 loyal guards and divided them between the tower and Bellini Pier. Then he made the choice his enemies believed he would never make. "Release the waterfront files to the board, the police, and every major lender," he ordered. Gabriel glanced at him through the mirror. Those files would expose the Bellini scheme, but they would also reveal Moretti operations Dante had spent years protecting. The financial damage could cost him hundreds of millions of dollars and weaken his empire overnight. "Boss, once they are public, we cannot take them back." Dante looked at Elena. "An empire can be rebuilt." His voice lowered. "She cannot." Elena felt the words settle somewhere beneath her fear. He was not choosing her because she was helpless. He was choosing her because she had risked everything to tell the truth, and he refused to let courage become a punishment. They reached Moretti Tower with 18 minutes remaining. The lobby stood empty beneath emergency lighting, its polished marble reflecting red alarms. Dante moved beside Elena this time, not ahead of her, while Gabriel and 2 guards covered the stairwell. At the 42nd floor, Elena activated the fire override. Steel doors clicked open throughout the tower. 60 seconds, she warned. They ran. When they reached Dante's private office, Tyler dragged Sophia into the hallway with one arm around her shoulders and a gun held near her side. Sophia's face was pale but uninjured. Tyler smiled when he saw Elena. "There she is, the secretary who forgot her place." Dante raised his hands and stepped forward. "Let my sister go. Drop your weapon." Dante placed it on the carpet. "Now the drive." Elena stood 10 feet behind him, the memory card hidden inside her closed fist. Tyler looked at her with the same contempt he had shown in the conference room, but Elena no longer felt the urge to disappear. "You framed me because you thought no one would believe a woman like me over an executive like you," she said. "You counted on me being embarrassed, quiet, and grateful for whatever respect you allowed me." Tyler tightened his hold on Sophia. "You should have stayed quiet." Elena lifted the memory card, "and you should have learned how scheduled transfers work." Every screen inside the office turned on at once. The quarterly accounts, hidden payments, security footage, and Tyler's messages appeared across 12 monitors. Elena had used the emergency network to broadcast the evidence to the Moretti board, federal investigators, and every executive still connected to the company system. Tyler's face collapsed. "What did you do?" "I stopped asking permission to be believed." Sophia drove her heel down onto Tyler's foot and twisted free. Dante crossed the distance before Tyler could recover, knocking the weapon from his hand and pinning him against the desk. Gabriel secured Sophia and pulled her behind cover. No shot was fired. No one had to die. Dante could have ended Tyler's life in that moment, but Elena said his name once, softly, and he stopped. He looked back at her, saw the bruises she had hidden and the strength she no longer did, then released Tyler into Gabriel's custody. "He answers in court," Elena said. Dante nodded. "He answers to everyone." A phone rang on the desk. The screen showed Bellini Pier, where the decoy package had already led police and Moretti guards to the waiting conspirators. The trap was collapsing. Then Tyler began to laugh. "You think this ends with me?" he said. "Marcus is already inside the building." Dante's expression hardened. From the open office behind them came the sound of a second lock engaging. Elena turned and saw Marcus standing beside the control panel with a detonator in his hand, while the red emergency clock above him began counting down from 3 minutes. Marcus raised the detonator, and the emergency clock dropped to 2 minutes and 58 seconds. "The charges are wired to the executive floor," he said. "One wrong move, and everything Dante built disappears." Elena stared at the control panel behind him, then at the thin cable running beneath the carpet toward the conference room. Marcus wanted them frightened enough to obey, but fear had controlled her for too long already. Dante stepped slightly in front of her, his body forming a shield, while his voice remained calm. "You came here for the drive. Take it and leave the others out of this." Marcus smiled. Still protecting her? She was useful because no one noticed her. That was always her greatest value. Elena felt the old insult searching for a place to land, but it found none. She moved beside Dante instead of hiding behind him. "You were wrong," she said. "Being overlooked taught me how to see everything." Her eyes shifted to the fire suppression panel near the door. The detonator in Marcus's hand was wireless, but the building's emergency system could interrupt local signals for 30 seconds during a full evacuation alert. She had tested the feature months ago after Dante complained about a security drill. "Sophia," Elena said carefully, "pull the alarm beside you." Marcus turned his head for half a second. Sophia slammed her palm against the red switch. Sirens exploded through the floor, steel shutters began descending, and the detonator's green light flashed yellow. Dante moved instantly. He crossed the room, caught Marcus's wrist, and forced the device away before the signal returned. Marcus swung wildly, but Dante blocked the blow and drove him to the carpet. Elena grabbed the detonator, removed the battery, and threw both pieces in opposite directions. The countdown stopped at 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Gabriel rushed forward and restrained Marcus beside Tyler, while the bomb squad waiting downstairs was called to the executive floor. Dante remained on one knee for a moment, breathing hard, then looked toward Elena as if the entire room had disappeared around her. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "Are you?" A cut marked his cheek, and his wounded forearm had begun bleeding through the bandage, but he stood and crossed to her anyway. He did not touch her until she nodded. Then he placed both hands gently around her shoulders, careful of every bruise, and lowered his forehead toward hers. "You saved my sister," he whispered. Elena's voice trembled. "We saved her." Police arrived minutes later. Tyler, Marcus, Victor, and the Bellini conspirators were taken to custody, while the financial records Elena released connected to every payment threat and false contract. The waterfront deal collapsed. Several board members resigned, and Dante lost a fortune exposing the truth, but not once did he ask Elena whether the cost had been worth it. 3 days later, Moretti Tower reopened. Elena returned wearing a deep blue dress and no coat to hide behind. The bruises had begun to fade, but she no longer treated them like proof of shame. Employees who once whispered now stood when she entered the conference room, not because Dante demanded it, but because she had become the woman who saved the company by refusing to stay silent. Dante waited at the head of the table in a black suit, his arm bandaged beneath the sleeve. Before the full board, he announced that Elena Bennett was no longer his secretary. For one painful second, the room seemed to close around her. Then he placed a new contract on the table. Director of Strategic Integrity, he said. Full authority over every account, every security review, and every executive who thinks her voice can be ignored. Elena looked at the salary, the title, and the signature already waiting beneath his. This is not charity, Dante added. You earned more than this before any of us understood what you were protecting. Months passed. The investigation cleared Elena completely. Her landlord received the truth instead of forged evidence, and the people who had mocked her watched her lead meetings they were once too arrogant to invite her into. Dante remained feared in his world, but around Elena, his strength became quieter. He remembered how she took her coffee, walked on the outside edge of the sidewalk, and asked before reaching for her hand. One winter evening, they stood on the rooftop above Chicago, warm lights glowing behind them while snow gathered along the railing. Dante placed his coat around her shoulders, not because she was hiding, but because the wind was cold. I spent 8 years searching for the woman who saved my life, he said. Then I opened the wrong door and found her again. Elena smiled. You also found a corporate conspiracy. That was less important. He took her hand in front of Sophia, Gabriel, and the people who had become their family. You never needed to become smaller to fit into my life, he told her. I needed to become worthy of the space you already deserved. Elena looked across the city and finally felt what she had once believed belonged only to other women: safety, respect, love, and a home where she never had to apologize for existing. The wrong door had exposed her pain, but it also opened the life both of them had been too wounded to imagine. So tell us, would you have trusted Dante after that first moment, or would you have walked away? Share your answer, and subscribe to the channel for more stories where courage changes everything.